Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. And welcome to day 1 of teaser season for patch 3.27. How do we decide that it's teaser season? Well, I just make up my own mind based upon the amount of news Grinding Gear Games are putting out. But this, I think, is the first time I've made that call before we've had an expansion name. We do not yet know what 3.27's expansion is going to be called. That is something Grinding Gear Games are keeping very, very tight-lipped. Ordinarily, they would have told us this either 2 or 5 days ago. So we're in somewhat uncharted territory, but this is some news about the meat and potatoes of what 327 is going to be like, so I'm declaring it teaser season. Anyways, let's dig into Grinding Gear Games' quite short announcement here, and the most important thing here is this paragraph. We really love the Mercenaries mechanic overall and intend on adding it to the game in the future, but they will not be added in 327. Much like a lot of leagues when they go core, we need time to rebalance, adjust mechanics, and review how they will fit into the game when not necessarily appearing in every zone. They will be returning, just not yet. This actually surprises me somewhat. I was not expecting Mercenaries to go core because they're one of those things that gives an enormous amount of player power at the top end, but they don't give very much to casual players. The casual player experience with Mercenaries is that you get a Mercenary, you put your second best set of gear on them, they end up being a fairly tanky combat ally that doesn't do a huge amount and doesn't really strengthen your character build. On the flip side, you can end up with a Mercenary that is set up for item rarity farming. The Mercenary has a whole bunch of item rarity gear on it. You go around priming monsters, so the Mercenary can then kill them with something with Culling Strike, and then the Mercenary's rarity stats are used in order to determine the loot that you get, and you get far, far more loot than the casual player would have got. To put it another way, the veteran player here is able to get all of the benefits of increased item rarity, but none of the opportunity costs that they would otherwise suffer for equipping all of that item rarity. At the same time, the more casual player, they don't think to do this because they're not that experienced with optimizing within Path of Exile. Or alternately, you use Doryani's prototype on your Mercenary in order to suppress the resistances of nearby enemies, and you get all the benefits of that build around chess piece without any of the drawbacks of it. So essentially, this is one of those mechanics that for veteran players is an enormous amount of power. For casual players, it's only a small amount of power. And the reason that that ends up tending to matter is that when Grinding Gear Games develop further things to add into the endgame, then they have to say, okay, what's the audience for this? If the audience is the casual player, let's say they were adding another copy of the Coward's Trial unique map, then they've just got to accept that veteran players can farm this really, really efficiently and really, really fast, and they're going to have farmed out any valuable loot before the casual player sees it. And the decision to give more power to the Powergamer end of the spectrum ends up making it even easier for them to achieve that. Alternately, if it's something that's more challenging, like the Uber Elder encounter, and it's designed for the very top end of the player base, then they have to say, okay, well, Mercenaries are making players X% more powerful, therefore we need to make this X% harder, otherwise it's not going to appeal to the people we want it to. That's a difficult situation Grinding Gear Games are going to find themselves in unless they make some pretty drastic changes to the way that Mercenaries work. We will see what they do, but we're not going to see what they do in 327. Those decisions are going to come later. Maybe we'll be talking about those in 328 teaser season or 329 teaser season. Just as an aside, why hasn't one of these been called 4.0 yet? The other question I want to bring up about Mercenaries that isn't really talked about here is the inherent RNG in the Mercenaries system. If you've got a particular combination of things in mind that you want a Mercenary to have, it is extremely rare to get that. Now, there's plenty of things in Path of Exile that are extremely rare. The Unique Belt Mageblood comes to mind as something that pretty much everyone wants, and that is definitely not common. But if you do get a Mageblood and you don't want it, you can trade it, or if you get a second one. However, with the Mercenaries, if you get something that's perfect for someone else but that you don't want, you kind of have nothing you can do with it. And the really, really rare combinations that you might want for certain builds, they're not something that you can target farm realistically in any way. I mean, you can exile Mercenaries that can bias things a little bit in your favor, but the odds are still going to be overwhelmingly against you. To take an example of one Mercenary that I theory crafted that would be quite useful, you could have Determination and Flamelink as your Category 3 skills, and your Category 2 skills would exclude Frostblink and would exclude Consecrated Path. And the reason you want to avoid these, teleport move skills will cause your Mercenary to move away from your Flamelink range, and so your Flamelink will fall off sometimes. You can definitely use a Mercenary that has one of those teleport skills, it's just going to be a little bit worse. So, how rare do you think that combination is? Well, it turns out it's actually really rare. We don't know the exact numbers because we don't have any way to data mine the weightings of the individual Mercenary categories from each other, but it definitely feels like it's something that is in the 1 to 2 per 1,000 maps range. and this is your setup that you're looking for to get your build truly rolling. Now, there are plenty of other items in the game that are rarer than 1 to 2 per 1,000 maps, but you can trade for them. I wanted to imagine what it would feel like if you wanted to take this Mercenaries feeling of you might have to settle for something that's not exactly what you wanted and apply it to a different part of build crafting, and that is your ascendancy choices. Imagine you completed the 4th labyrinth and the game said, hey, we're going to give you a random set of 4 ascendancy points. If you don't like it, well, you can go do the labyrinth again and maybe you'll get something better. That is the way I feel Mercenaries play in practice, unless we get more deterministic control over the exact combinations that are set up there. Anyways, let's go through the rest of this announcement because there's a few specific details that are worth knowing about. Firstly, the Mercenaries League is going to be ending. So the old league is ending about 4 days before the new league begins. It's not exactly 4 days, but it's pretty close to it. And that time is listed in your time zone in the official Grinding Gear Games website announcement, which I'll put a link to down in the description below as well. When that happens, items you have given Mercenaries to equip are going to go into remove only tabs. So if you're one of those players that doesn't care about standard, then they're basically deleted. But if you are someone who does care about standard or other permanent leagues, then those items will still be available to you, but they'll be in remove only tabs. So once you take them out, they're going to clog up your character's inventory. Mercenaries themselves are getting deleted. Trarthan Gems, we'll come back to these in a sec. Mercenary League specific uniques will move into the global drop pool. Now I'll put a link down in the description below to a list of items that were added in patch 3.26. This is on the POE wiki. And here you'll be able to click on the items. So for instance, Betrayal Sting is not Mercenaries exclusive. This one actually comes from the Incarnation of Neglect instead. So you'll be able to have a flick through if there's any of these uniques you're interested in and see if they say can be obtained by taking this item from a mercenary that had this item equipped after winning a duel. That was the acquisition method in 3.26. These items are going to go into the Drop Anywhere unique item pool, and they'll be taking place in 3.27. So if any of these are things you'd like to have, just be aware you're going to have no idea how rare they're going to be. And that's particularly important for things like Azadi Crest that have turned out to be fairly good in certain circumstances. Now, Trarthan Gems, I really like what they're doing here. These are no longer going to be tied to Mercenaries. Instead, they're going to be coming from Heist. They're going to be coming from side chests in Heist. So they're not being added to the ends of the blueprints, to the curios. Instead, they're going to be added to some of the side rooms along the way, specifically the ones that have a gem icon on them. Now, I'm hoping to see more of this because Heist has developed into a very stale meta where currently the best strategy is just to pretty much ignore all the monsters, run straight to the end, take the curio, and get out. This is now going to provide some incentive to explore some of those side chests. Where I'd like to see this end up is that the current blueprint blitz approach in Heist still feels viable, but at the same time it also feels compelling to do something different instead, especially because in Heist, the more of the side rooms that you go into, the more monsters that will attack you on the way out, and therefore just the more interesting the mechanic tends to be. Players are definitely very good at optimizing all the fun out of mechanics, and that has definitely happened when it comes to Heist. The thing I would really like to see happen here is for some of those other chests in Heist, particularly some of the ones that aren't as good as the gem chests, to get some specific items from elsewhere in the game as well. We've hit a point recently where most of those chests just aren't worth opening, but if they have some things that can only come from there and things that are wanted in some quantity and across the trade league overall, then there'll be a reason to go back there. But even if the only one of these changes is to the gem chest, it is still going to open up new ways to engage with Heist, which is definitely a bit of a bonus. Anyways, that's day one. I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlobs have interesting results. And once more, if you wanted those tips on challenges for 3.26, I will put them up on screen now. In fact, they've already been there a few seconds.